Thank you guys for coming to tonight's session on breaking through these brick walls. So tonight is a third part of a four-part session where I'm going to wrap up how many of us who have Native American ancestry, how we're able to possibly find that information through records, through researching records. So as you know, I've always said that DNA will help point out our connections, but the rubber in the road, the work is finding the connection through the records. And so when you're starting to research enslavement, you have to really start looking at records. So here we go. Many of you know my motivation is my grandmother, Violetta Van Hoos, and I will forever be a grandma's girl. And on the right hand side is the third great grand aunt or grandmother. I'm still trying to yet prove that theory. But finding this kind of record by looking through DNA matches and then looking at photos of my matches in my trees are the finds we're looking for, trying to find the ancestors and our connections to them. And we know DNA don't lie, it verifies. And so this is going to be that part where now we have the DNA matches, but we're trying to figure out our connections. And this is the Native American line. So finding your enslaved ancestors in records, probates, wills, deeds, tax records, orphan records, etc. Now, when you embark upon trying to research enslavement, I wanted to highlight the levels that you must go on and why you're going to start looking at records versus trying to use DNA. So the green shade is the easy. That's going to be our immediate family that we know. Then if we're lucky, someone's telling us about our grandparents are telling us about their grandparents. And if they're lucky, maybe they knew something about whether they were enslaved or they had a name. But once you hit this middle level, the generation 4 to 5 and that generation 6 plus, you are going to be looking in records. So if you're looking for someone who has a birthday prior to 1870, you are going to have to do the grunt work of looking at records. Many people now, like me, I found my connections and I've been blessed to be able to have DNA matches who had that information in their tree. So if you can find those kinds of gems that link your bridge, your connections, that's wonderful. But 8 times out of 10, that may not happen. And so we're going to have to use DNA to get us there, but we're going to have to use the records to seal the deal. And if you're not researching records, then you just might as well stop. And if you're on a phone, you definitely might as well stop, because this is the kind of work you really are going to need a bigger landscape to see the information you're looking for. So here we go. So when I start looking at records, many times Ancestry has those records already because they're working with all these third-party services like Family Search and Find a Grave. So all of those are the separate websites, and we're able to see all that data in Ancestry, but many people aren't able to pay. So you're going to these separate websites to try to find that information. But Family Search and the LDS are committed to transcribing or digitizing all of the records, and then now transcribing those records either with volunteers and now artificial intelligence. And so within the last few years, Family Search launched this Family Search Labs, which is being able to search for matches or search for records by using AI, artificial intelligence. And that's found under the Family Search Lab on Family Search's homepage toward the bottom. So once you go to Family Search Labs, it's called Experiments. So it's called full text searching. So what you're doing is you're going to be able to type in some keywords and see if their artificial intelligence or their AI can find records for you instead of you doing it manually. So I've been researching 27 years. The grunt work was manually looking at these records and trying to transcribe them myself. So on Family Search, once you choose Experiment, all you would start off by doing is typing in some keyword, your location, your time period. You can put a name if there's a particular person you're looking for. I like to type the word under keyword slave, Negro, servant. These are the kind of words that were being referred to slaves. So these are the kinds of text that you want to try to find in your records. Now, once you type in that information, it still gives you a bigger view of data set. So on the left hand side, you're able to filter that information down more further. So everything in yellow has what you typed into your keyword, right? So I typed slave. So I see Virginia, I see North Carolina, but I was looking for Alabama. So I have to do a little bit more filtering out that search. But once I filtered the search, I typed in, I chose 1800. I also chose the year 1700. In the year 1800, there were 415 records. I also chose Alabama and Pike, Alabama. So full text search pulled back for me groups of data sets. And I'll show you why. These groups of data sets are coming from the books that were digitized. So now they're showing us they've actually done some improvements to the website. So this is a really cool look and way of navigating. So in each group, at the top, it tells you whatever the label is or the title is, but the bottom tells you how many matches are within that grouping. So the first one had 19 matches, the next one had 12 matches, and then the third had 9 matches. And so I chose the marriage records, colored troops, because I said, why are there slave records in colored troops, right? Or marriage records? That just seemed odd to me. So, and actually, I've transcribed all of the deeds and probate records in Pike. So this is telling me maybe there is a book that had records I missed. So when I'm done doing other work I'm doing with this body of Pike slave records, I'm going to go back and use full text search to see if it can find something I missed. But how I like to search, I don't use full text search because it does not pull everything. It absolutely doesn't. I've transcribed, like I said, all of Pike in both the deeds and the probate records. And there are some that have been grouped I may have missed, but there's a lot more than we saw in those groups. So in family search, you want to go to search at the top, choose the option for images. Once this page displays, for me, I like to type browse all of the collections that are within that group. And once you see all of the collections, it's going to be alphabetized pretty much. Then I go to the Alabama estate files because again, we're looking for slave deaths, the records that are tied to slavery. Slavery could be marriages. There could be other bodies of categories, but for right now, this is one of the larger bodies. So I am transcribing all of the records that are in the counties so that we can find these slave names that we're looking for. So once I chose that, now because I'm going to filter it out, the date range on the right says 1700 to 1870. Pike County didn't exist in the 1700s, but I don't want to miss anything. So then I can choose probate records, estate case files, wills. So you can choose what particular records you want to see. They do even have a category indigenous people records. So that would be something now that I'm looking at the Native American records I want to take a look at. And on the left-hand side, the very last column says volume. So what those are showing you is if you ever go into a probate office, you will see book A, B, C, D, E. So this is letting you know that that particular image group number contains volume D and the pages that are within it. So it's a phenomenal service so that we don't have to physically go there to look for the records. But there may be some records that have not been digitized, but at least a great body of the work can be done this way. So once you look at the actual record, this is the probate record. This is showing you the book and then showing you the images of the pages. And everything is in cursive. As most of us know, this particular book has 172 pages in this probate record, which are the wills. And once you click on a page, this is showing you all of the last names that you're looking for. So for me, I will go to the name that I want. The problem is because this is enslavement in the enslavement period, our ancestors were separated and connected to many names. So it's challenging trying to assume we know the name. So that's one reason I'm taking the effort to transcribe everything so that we will see our family members and we can find those connections. But Cursive is challenging by itself. So I do take the time to adjust the brightness because those sometimes it looks dark because it's camera images. So you can tweak the brightness, the contrast. And this is a deed. So deeds are the selling of the slaves. No one died, but the slaves were sold or gifted to family members. And this is that body of information that we really want to find because we rarely see deeds in ancestry. We will see wills, we rarely see deeds. And the deeds are what happened before that person died. So if they've given those slaves away or they bought slaves from someone before their death, we're assuming we have one name, but until we see where that slave actually came from, will we know that that is the name that we should go by? Because you will be jumping names if the further back you go. I started at Stinson in 1870. My third great grandmother married a Lloyd. My mother's maiden name was Lloyd, or her father's name was Lloyd. So I was able to use oral stories for Lloyd to take me all the way to 1870. Then I saw his great grandfather and his wife Ann Stinson and their marriage record. She married a Lloyd. So I knew Ann was a Stinson. That's how I was able to say, let me start by researching the Stinsons. I'm at 1870. Where do I go? I have to look at records. So that's why records are so very important. But the devil's in the details because the story goes that she was actually a part of the Foreman name that got sold from the Betzel name that got sold to the Stinsons. And her father was tied to the Foreman name. And so if you don't do this body of work, you will not find your ancestors to be able to find your other family members. So this is that particular deed page is going to show you someone who is the seller and who is the buyer. Or the buyer is first and the seller is to the right. So me, when I'm looking for a name, I look at every page because it's alphabetized. They also do a reversal, which is the first one is A to Z of the seller to the buyer, and then they reverse it, the buyer to the seller. So you may miss a bunch of things, assuming that the only thing you're looking for is that on that particular page. So I like to look at every page. If I'm looking for a particular name, I don't assume anything. Okay. So I decided I've already transcribed Pike. So this year I said, let me take a stab at transcribing Macon County. And so Macon County is heavy because this was a part of the body of land. Macon County, Bullitt County, Pike County, Butler County, Autauga County, all of these things were missing because the Native Americans were here first. And we're forgetting to find our connections to that particular body of people. And so when I first started looking at one of the oldest books for Macon that I could find, you also going to be looking at when was that county created. Macon wasn't created until 1830 as far as being adopted into as a state, brought into the Union. So I'm not going to see an 1820 book for Macon because it was actually the name changed from Mississippi Territory or possibly Kanika. So you got to know what the where to look. What was it called at the time of your research, and then where to look. But I started with the oldest book I could find, Macon County, and yes, it's cursive, and yes, this is a body of work that we're going to strain our eyes and strain our brain. But at the end of the day, now they don't want you to learn cursive because this is where the jewels are in being able to read this. Thankfully, we have ChatGPT. We have many different features out here that allows us to be able to transcribe it, but I promise you, their transcriptions are 50-50. Sometimes I will throw that information to ChatGPT just to take an ease off my eyes. And then I got to compare ChatGPT to the real document because it is not exact. So you still have to do work, right? You still have to do work. And so this is when I'm going to zoom it in so I can read a lot better and closer. And what I only look for when I look at these pages is the word slave. I'm looking for free people, the word slave, a girl, a boy, a man, a woman, because that means that person was a slave. And so I said, so when I started this Macon County journey with this book, I started seeing things like, what is this Polecat Springs Creek? That's not a body of water. What is that? And so I was like, what am I looking at? So this is what it said. We, the chiefs, head men now in council, have saw a paper purporting to be a free pass for a woman of color, given to her by the former agent, Benjamin Hawkins. This freedom for the said woman, Lucy, and her children is hereby confirmed. The names of the children is as follows, to wit: Bess, about 29 years of age, and her children, to wit: Creasy, a girl; George, a boy; Lucy, a girl; Dick, a boy; Sandy, a boy; Toga, a girl; Elsie, a girl. All of which is the children and grandchildren of the above named woman, Lucy, given under our hands this day and date above. Little Prince and Big BW Warrior. And I was floored. What is going on? There is a free woman of color who went before the chiefs saying she was free, and her children and grandchildren. What is going on? And who is these prince people and the warrior people? These are the chiefs. I said, okay, let me look at the next page. So the next page basically said, a special orphans court began and held in the town of Tuskegee on the fourth Monday in April 1835. Present this honor Joseph P. Clegg, judge. Ordered by the court that Samuel Cobb be appointed guardian for the following free Negroes, to wit: Sandry, Dick, Lucy, Elsie, Suki, and their children. Ordered by the court that James Allen is appointed guardian for the following free Negroes: Bess, Creasy, George, Lucy, Mariah, Manuel, Cyrus, John, Adam, Mariah, Harriet, Nancy, Hannah, Phoebe, Mary, and Wiley. Ordered by the court that Zachariah McGirth be appointed administrators of the estate of Mary Wells, deceased in lieu of Mary McGirth, as was appointed on the first Monday in March last, the previous year. Then the last paragraph, Dick, the bearer hereof, a man of color, is son of Lucy, a free woman of this nation, whose grandmother was a Cherokee, is entitled to his freedom, and be it hereby known that we, the chiefs of the Creek Nation, do hereby confirm his having originated from free persons. Signed 1824. And I was like, who are these people? Who is this whole body of a family who has free papers, living amongst the Creeks, but of Cherokee origin? And many times I've been, in having conversation with different people, and they're saying, oh no, the Cherokees did not blend with the Creeks. Okay, until you see something like this, which is factual. And then you start seeing something like this, which is 1824, which means they are still living on the land. This is before the Trail of Tears. We're seeing Native American who are identified as free persons of color, not of Indian origin, who were free. Okay. Here I was like, who is this Lucy? So I started researching records, transcribing them for the body of my cousins so that I can share with you guys how we can find our family. And now I'm on this whole new research tangent. Lucy fights to establish her family's freedom amongst the Creek Nation between the years 1824 to 1835. So this was the beautiful picture that ChatGPT gave me of what Lucy would look like. Okay, here we go. So this is what I now needed to figure out, because I hate social studies, hated it with a passion. Now I'm knee deep in the weeds of history, but here we go. Who was Benjamin Hawkins? Why did he give Lucy and her family a pass to live amongst the Creeks, even though she was of Cherokee descent? I needed to find Lucy amongst Benjamin's papers. If you're giving her a pass, why did you give her a pass? Where's this pass? What was the information that was around you giving her this pass? I needed to research Native Americans now in Georgia and Alabama because we know they were there. But that was an area and body of work research I didn't want to tackle because I knew it was heavy laden information. And 36 years deep, I finally was ready for this heavy laden of information. Review the 1832 Alabama Creek Census. I had seen this census. I had seen the transcription of the 1832 census. I had seen it on microfiche years ago when I realized that this was Alabama area, but I still was trying to find my grandmother people. I wasn't ready. And then, am I related to Lucy and her family? Because my grandmother and family members, and if you're in Alabama, you know you heard, oh, we're Creek, oh, we're Cherokee, oh, we're definitely descending of Native Americans, whether it was grandma knew her grandfather. That was my grandmother's story. My aunt said, I saw my grandfather. So that would have been my aunt's great grandfather. She walked with him before he died in Bullitt County, Alabama. So I'm trying to find my Native American piece. And yes, this is me going down a rabbit hole because we know with genealogy, they're going to come. So here we go. Who is Benjamin Hawkins? So in week 2 of this session, I talked about, it was probably week 1. I did this whole conversation around Benjamin Hawkins because I needed to understand who this man was and why is he giving out passes and what is a pass? So Benjamin Hawkins, born 1754 to 1818, was the U.S. Indian agent for the Creek. He issued Lucy's original freedom papers and worked to negotiate peaceful relations between Native nations and settlers. What? Okay. Who are these Indian agents? Why was he so special? So now I'm going down the rabbit hole to figure out who are these agents and what was their body of work and what was their role in America during this period of time. So these are some prominent names, but there were many other Indian agents who don't have photos and were not well known. But these are some of the agents, right? So I said, okay, let me figure out who are some of these agent people. The Creek Agency was run by Benjamin Hawkins, acted as an intermediary between the U.S. government and the Creek Nation. So it helped to certify freedom papers and maintain Creek Nation customs. So, okay, that was your role. If we remember, America was nothing but Native Americans. So this is early as 1492 is when this map is identified. The nations, all of the different Native American tribes, right? So Alabama, which was so cool because now I'm finally paying attention, the Native Americans called it Alabama. Okay, I'm teaching myself history that I didn't learn in school. Here we go. So I found this beautiful map of that they created of what the Indian tribes looked like and where they were here in North America. And then and it was just so cool to see, the body of work that they were giving. And then these are the homelands of the 5 tribes. So paying attention to what tribe was in what area. So creeks were actually upper and lower creeks. So the upper and lower creeks covered Alabama and Georgia. So they basically, the top half and the bottom half were the upper creeks and the lower creeks. The Choctaw was to the left, Mississippi. The Cherokee was above, and the Seminoles, which I did not know until doing all this body of work in the last 2 months, was Florida. So, I'm trying to understand where were they? Were they all over the place? No. They're just like north and south. They're in different areas of the country. So this is where the 5 tribes originated. And that was that beautiful enlarged photo I was trying to show of the body of work that they created. And it's just so cool. Like they have the Muskogee Confederacy. And I think that looks like that's part of Georgia where that was. So these are just some, when we're starting to go into the Native American research, the things we want to try to learn when we get there. But this is what the Fort Hawkins looked like. Fort Hawkins, 1806 to 1821. So now I'm very visual. So I want to see what did it look like at that period of time, right? And then these are the pertinent areas that Benjamin Hawkins traveled pertaining to his body of work as an Indian agent. He was not the only one. Remember, the other agents are covering all the other Indian tribes. So their job, and you will see, so I liken this to Bonanza. Why? Because if we watch the television series Bonanza, even though it was drawn in 1860, it gives us this visual of what it looked like during that period of time, right? When the Native Americans were actually on the land, still had not left the land. And even though this was close to the Civil War, I was really looking at it for a concept of history. This particular episode was showing how the man on the bottom, he actually set up shop and he had a business, but he married this Native American woman. And so the Cartwrights had to do business with this family. But now, of course, we know Bonanza was showing blends of what history was looking like in that period of time. But these are the past, these are records of the passes that were given. And what the passes represented were when you traveled from Florida and you were trying to make your way to Mississippi because you heard that you had purchased a body of land and you wanted to go over there and seek your fortune because the Native Americans still lived on the land, the agents were able to say to give you a pass that you can travel from A to B. We believe you're a great person of character. We believe you are going to do no harm to the Indians that you come across, and they are not to do harm to you. So that was their job. Their job was to keep peace in the area. So these books were actually transcribed by someone to be able to, they probably did the same thing. They went into the probate office and they went into the universities, which have these now, and they transcribed all of these bodies of books. And I bought them, found them online if I could, and I purchased them because I'm looking for all the slaves because the slave names are listed somewhere. And so this is another level of body of research that we have to try to do if we're looking for where our family are connected in their ties to enslavement and their slaveholders. This is what was within the pages of the book, where it's showing how over in South Carolina, Barnwell district, they travel from one place trying to get to another place. The particular one in the front shows James Scarlett, where he's saying this person can travel to Mississippi and Louisiana. And this is as early as 1804. So when we're trying to understand why do we have family over in Louisiana or Arkansas, and that's because they had to travel, well, they traveled to set up shop, to do business. Maybe they traveled to take goods from Pennsylvania over to Mississippi, and they had to get passes to do all of this traveling. So many times there were no list of slaves, but then sometimes there were. And so also during this period of time, what was happening was the land started being ceded to the cession of land started to happen, which means once they learned the Native Americans language, many of them intermarried. I'll talk about that in a minute. Then now their goal was to get them to give up the land so they can move in and take over the land. And so these numbers represent the land being ceded by the Native Americans with a fight, without a fight. This was the ceding of the land in a period of time when that happened. This is Alabama's cession that occurred during that period of time, and the numbers represent. There's a chart that, and I did this in week 2 as well, talking about the cession and the actual Native American history and culture and the ceding of the land. Some was volunteer, some was by force. So we have to remember that information, that it wasn't always by force, right? But the 172 is this area I'm researching because I'm caring about when did we see this body of land. Joan is Butler. Butler is probably a little past on the other side of that yellow line. So that land got seeded at a different time. I think 75 is definitely earlier than 172. So if you're trying to figure out what was the land like at that period of time in the Native Americans, well, then this is the information we want to know. And this is what the two of those charts look like together. Now, this is the time period of the sessions that were occurring. So the chart on the right represents 1773 to 1832, and the yellow dots represent the periods of time when the land got ceded to the last set of land that got ceded in, I thought there was an 11, number 10, the Treaty of Casita in 1832. And we know that was close near the Trail of Tears, but it actually was before the Trail of Tears. This is them giving up their land in the periods of time. And we got to remember what Native Americans were there at that time. This is the Creek removal. Now, before the removal, in early 1800s, the Creeks occupied large parts of present-day Alabama and Georgia. 1813 to 1814, the Creek War led to the defeat of the Red Stick faction of the Creek by U.S. forces under Andrew Jackson. The Treaty of Fort Jackson in 1814 forced the Creek Nation to cede over 21 million acres of land. In 1832, the Treaty of Casita, the Creeks agreed to give up their remaining land in exchange for individual land allotments and the right to stay or sell and relocate west voluntarily. And that's something that we care about. They didn't all leave. It's so frustrating to know my family's from Alabama, but I'm talking to people from Louisiana and Maryland and Mississippi, and they want to tell me that I got to look at the Dawes Roll to find my family. I'm like, why? My family was remained behind. We didn't all go. And how do I find my connection to the Dawes Roll? So that's really what I'm trying to do right here. I'm like, you know what? Apparently, I got to look at the records in order to find my connection to the Dawes. So let me do that. Now, this is what my rabbit hole looks like now. I done bought books. I'm online downloading online books, research papers, looking at the Native Americans, looking at the Indian agents. It's a huge body of work. And I'm not looking at no DNA whatsoever. Because to find my connection to the DNA, this is what must be done. Now, the Indian agents who married Native American women, that was an important conversation that I shared last week. I did a talk on the Melungeons because we needed to understand where are these Native Americans who intermarried so that we can find our connection to them wherever this is. So Benjamin Hawkins actually married a woman named Susan Lavinia Downs, who it was believed to be a Creek Indian woman. And there's people saying she was, there's people saying she wasn't. I've purchased books, and these books are telling me that she was. So the two of them had a total of 6 daughters and 1 son. But then in 1812, he felt he was on his deathbed, so he married her to make sure the children were legitimate in the U.S. society. And that was Jeffersonia. So Jeffersonian, James Madison, Virginia, Carolina, Cherokee, Muskogee, Georgia. This man was committed to his body of work, which was so cool. So, I was like, let me see if I'm related to Hawkins, because now he's intermarried into this name. So I now got to research Mr. Hawkins. Okay, that was another rabbit hole. But this is just showing us notable agents who in fact married, because in order for them to learn the language, they had to commingle amongst the tribe. And then there weren't that many women around, and I'm sure these Native American women were beautiful. So of course they would be smitten. And so some married into those families. And so that was a talk that I had last week on the Melungeon connection. And it's the challenges there were, because Native Americans never took a last name. Remember that. Europeans, the Europeans had last names. So as we're starting to see Native Americans with last names, note that that's something that's telling you there was a cross mixing of those two people, body of people. And so these marriages sometimes help bridge cultural divides. And so in order for them to be considered a chief, they had to live amongst the people. And so many times they took a wife. Europeans who married Native Americans. This was a woman, Ojibwe. I talked about this last week. I heard about the word, didn't know what it meant. So now this is me taking time. I heard about the name Schoolcraft, didn't know who she was, didn't know what it meant. But this is about us trying to figure out our Native American connection. And we have to start with the ones we can find so that we can try to research deeper into the ones that are not as prominent. So Alexander McGillivray, also known as Haboy Hili Miko. So his father was Scottish and his mother was Muskogee. So his birth name was Alexander McGillivray, and they renamed him Haboy Hili Miko. And he became a Muskogee Creek leader. So it's important for us to be able to know those kinds of things and what was he doing and what was his role and how was life for him amongst them so that we can figure out where's our people. So all of this is about, for me, where's my people? Where is the people? And so this is just showing you different people that I had talked about last week that were European of Native American origin. Louis Riel, individuals with Native American and African, William McIntosh, also known as Tustanuggee Hutki, white warrior. And he was probably white because he was an early European historian. Let me see, where did it say what his origin was? But he was a blended origin as well. So of course I'm searching ancestry. Do I have Macintosh? Because now I'm getting a better understanding of where these names may be coming from when I didn't know before. And this is showing you here. This in the research I'm finding. This is some of the story. So I'm just posting to you the names, right? Because it's all about the names for us. So in this particular story, he's writing, I knew a half brother of Billy Rowland, who was a full white man. He was in the legislature of Georgia. He told me his father was Lakeland McIntosh. Okay, so I need to find me a tree with Lakeland McIntosh. And I need to see it with all his children. His oldest daughter by a Creek woman was named Jane. She married Billy Mitchell, a son of the then agent. And that she married Sam Hawkins, who was killed at the same time McIntosh was. Then she married Patty Carr. Then it goes on to say Chili and Lewis's sons and Hetty and Lucy's daughters got together. His daughters by the Cherokee woman married Ben Hawkins, the brother of Sam. So now, of course, I'm like, wait a minute. Let me go look for Ben Hawkins' genealogy tree. I didn't see a Sam. Who is this Ben? I'm on a whole nother trying to track down who is this Ben person. Because what you will see is that Ben Hawkins, this agent, died 1818, but Lucy's family kept fighting for their freedom through 1838. And that name Ben Hawkins still comes up. So this person is either a nephew or he's not a brother. I think he's a nephew who was also working as an agent under Ben Hawkins. And so these are the importance for us to know these names. Hopoitli Yoholo's son, called Dick Johnson, was killed. Okay, Ben Hawkins' widow married Spire Haggerty, who before that had a daughter of C.T. Cornells for a wife. Okay, now, no different than when we are researching the Europeans, looking for our slaves, and we got to know we got to build a tree with all their children so we can know the names. This is the same repetitive process. You have to understand the importance of these names and how they connected so that we can see how they remarried and, into each other's families lines. So this is just another me highlighting names. McGirth, Cornells, they were living in Tuskegee. Was a Tuskegee called Hopi Tustanugga? Okay, Tustanugga or Far Off Warrior. Then the name Peter McQueen. Well, I know I'm a McQueen out of Maryland. The McQueens came here to for their fortune, and one son changed his name to Queen, although he was a McQueen. So I already know that. So now, as I'm looking at the McQueen name, I'm like, okay, let me pay this some attention, because my ancestor was my grandmother's second great grandfather. He was born in Maryland, and he ended up in Alabama. And we were trying to figure out how. Okay. So volunteering the forced exodus. So now, this is all before I can figure out Lucy's story, right? So this is showing you their exodus, the path that they took. And I covered this last week, because when we're talking about, this is pre-Trail of Tears. For me, all I kept hearing about was the Trail of Tears and the Dolls Roll. That's all I knew, was those two bodies of work. But this is showing us that they were exiting before the force removal, going over to Oklahoma. And therefore, some of our people could have gone earlier. And the path they took, some people might have said, I'm staying here instead of going to Oklahoma. We don't know. And so this is opening up your minds into understanding where our family connections could have come from that we don't understand based on location. These were some of the tribes impacted by the voluntary removal to Mississippi, to the land east of Mississippi, or Indian Territory. So this is just showing us what Native Americans, which we already know. This is another visual of the volunteer immigration that went from Alabama. And it's amazing because the Pike, Fort Gaines is lower, but this is the actual path they had to take for safety. And there were different time periods and they took different paths. So this was the first path, this was the second route, and then this is the third route. And so this is all up until 1829. When we're trying to, so we might see someone's tree and they have people over there in those areas pre-1850 or so, pre the Dawes time period, 1890. How do you make sense of it? You got to go look at the records. And this is 1830 to 1839, what Alabama looked like in the period of time, because once they were forced, they were able to take over the land, give it a name, and then now they can start migrating from where they were coming into Alabama. And so again, this is saying Monroe gained land from Butler. So Butler may not have looked like this prior to this time period you're researching. You got to know that. Okay. So there was another session that occurred in 18 to 1831. But then now, this is about looking at clues through the census that was taken. So last week I shared how there was a census that was taken of the Native Americans before they were removed. So I know I was able to find the Alabama census that was taken. And mind you, this is just for the Macon, Barber, Pike, all the Native Americans that's in this lower section. So there is the upper creeks. There's the creeks that was over in Georgia. So I don't know what those census would look like, but I'm going to highlight tonight the importance of looking at the census so that we can find the clues we're looking for those connections. So the 1832 census is called the Parsons and Abbott Roll. That was the name that was given it by the two individuals who was tasked to take a census of all of the people. And over time, I actually had a copy of that original census, and it drove me crazy because I was like, what is these names? I don't know how to read this. The only name I saw on it 25 years ago that made sense was the last name Anderson, because that's my grandmother's father's name. And I said, maybe this is the connection, but I don't know how to prove it, so I'm going to have to put this on the shelf. So now this is the time this is off the shelf. This has been digitized. Those actual files are available online. This particular website was created many years ago, and so as you can see, it was last updated 2003. So I'm grateful that it was still active, because it could have been taken down, right? And so I was banging it to see what I can find. Now that it has been transcribed, it is made available online. So what I'm sharing with you is the 1832 census that occurred. So at the very bottom of that page, this is showing us, this is called the letters. So Abbott and Parsons were sending the government letters because they needed guidance on how to handle different things. The top one says he needed to understand regarding the census when they had multiple wives, Indian countrymen, and Negroes. So he sent a letter. So if you click that link, it'll take you to what that letter would have looked like or would have said. So there were correspondences that were occurring. The second one says regarding the census and Indian slaves. How about that? This is my first time visually paying attention to this. So when we see someone had slaves, they were not necessarily African American slaves. So all of these are important things to read. There were free black families that were living amongst them in 1832. I said, okay, I'm seeing this is making a little sense. And so this is what one of the letters looked like that he wrote to the government, um, asking his particular question from Fort Mitchell. And so this is the kind of thing I know I'm gonna take a slow chance of going back and looking at and dissecting. But then I clicked on the link, a list of town names and the heads of those households. So just like when they take a census of us, they're going to take a census of the head of household and the number of people in the house. So on the left side in the upper creek is showing us all of the head of households. And then on the right side, the lower creek, all of the head of households and the number of people that are in those towns. But then as you drill into the list, this is showing you the names of the heads of households. And Tomac Miko, he had 2 slaves. So there are a total of 3 people in his family. And so all of this is about dissecting. What I'm looking for is slaves and more slaves to start off, because I'm trying to figure out the slave connection with the Native Americans in that time. Then this is showing you on the page, the total population in the lower towns, including the slaves, but deduct the number of slaves. So there were 457 slaves living there at that time and 8,000 Native American people. So this links take you to the chiefs of the Upper Creek and the Lower Creek. And when I looked at the Upper Creek households, of all of the towns that they were in, this is showing you all of the slaves that were within those particular towns. And I was like, okay, I see some names that look Native American and American because there's last names. Okay. And then this is saying the Lower Creek towns, how many slaves were there, what were the town names. And then this is showing you a list of town chiefs. So there were principal chiefs, then there are town chiefs. And the township and the range would tell us, and I think I did that with ChatGPT, where is this location today, township and range in Alabama? Because now this is going to tell us where they were actually residing when we're trying to figure out what Native Americans were there. So if that Native American was there, and then I see slaves, and now I know the town, I got something to work with. Now, this particular thing is showing us, again, the town chiefs. But then this is as I'm looking at the town chiefs in the township and range, what I'm showing you is, remember when it talked about Lucy and Betty and were the children and who was the chief that sat there and signed that document with their names on it. Now I'm adding the record from the deed to the data. And now I'm trying to make an understanding. Was Lucy, Dick, Sandy, and Betsy and her children living amongst the Tuckabatchee? And then one of the chiefs was named Davy Barnett. So now I'm making sense of the European names. I'm making sense of the record with this body of census and data set work. The Cowitas. Lucy was living amongst the Cowitas. Dick, Sandy, Betsy, and her children in one of the records, Tola Warch Local, um, Tuscanawaha, he was actually one of the signing chiefs on that record. In Eufaula, which we know is Eufaula, um, this person sat amongst them. And then Chatak Sokfar, he said Manor Way Warchi. He sat amongst them as well. Yes, Amanda.
Right here on this page, right there where it says town of, and right there under what is that? Cositas? That one
Uh-huh.
right under there that has the red square or rectangle around it. Is
Mhm.
that Coweta for Georgia?
It could be. Well, no, because it could be. I can't say no. But again, we have township and range, and the Casitas and actually Casita is Georgia. It's on the border. I know that Casita is the border of Georgia because I got cousins that live there right now. So this is
Yes.
that could be definitely Georgia. And so the town chiefs, when they had to do business, they had to come together from their different tribes because they were the principal chiefs. So yes,
Interesting.
so
That's
that makes
very
sense.
interesting
I like that.
because I've heard of a Cusita, but it's a Cuseta, Alabama as well.
Yes, that makes sense. That conversation question even helped me because I know I'm pondering, was she in Alabama? Was she in Georgia? And if the principal chief is coming from there, so you're going to see how I'm trying to dissect all this and bringing it together so that I can research it further.
Wow, that's good.
So
That's good.
the surnames in this record. So now that's what's going to make sense for us, right? We need to see some last names, and we because the last names conf- transferred over to the census records. So now I'm looking at people with last names, and I'm going to pay attention to the last names that make sense for me. Whether now remember, I've transcribed a body of work from Pike County, Alabama. So I'm paying attention to a name someone said to me, a name that I've seen, and I'm paying attention to the information that is here. So the Cornol's name, we remember Cornol's was a name that was possibly sitting amongst the family, or they had some dealings with the family, right? So there is a Annie, there's a Betty, there's a Bob, and there's a Dick. And now I know for a fact Lucy and Dick and Betty. So I'm like, did they take the name Cornell? Okay, and then paying attention to the locations. Annie Cornels was in Tuckabacha. Betty Cornels was Tuckabacha. Bob Cornels was Tuckabacha, and he was considered a principal chief. So these are the things that I'm now like saying, okay, these were all living in the same place. They have these same last names. Not to exclude looking at the other people, but now I'm trying to make this make sense for us in our research. And so everything in a red line is a name I've heard, a name I've researched, or a name that was on a deed record of some sort that had some weight to it. The name Pyramid was from a DNA cousin where he said, pay attention to the name Pyramid. I'm like, okay, I have pyramid matches, Perryman. Don't understand them. But now there was this James Pyramid who lived in Eufaula, and so now I'm like, okay, I can pay attention to Mr. Pyramid now. Again, I mentioned the name McQueen, Jim McQueen, John McQueen. So now this is me. So thankfully, someone did this body of work so that I didn't have to go look at the census rolls for the Native American. Oh my gosh, that Abbott and Parsons transcription. I mean, the cursive writing and try to figure out what is it meaning and what is it saying. So this just makes our life a little better, a lot easier. More, I definitely am related to the Moors. The Moors, I know I will have a connection to the Stinsons in a roundabout way because slaves were sold and split up. So I'm paying attention to all of these names. And again, this John Moore was in, no, he was in Thlakacha, not Tukabacha. So I need to take time to pay attention to where's these locations. This is just showing you more names that now I'm like McGilvery. Remember I mentioned There was a Alexander McGillivray who married a Native American who, um, so now Polly McGillivray, she's in Tuskegee. Is that Tuskegee, which is Macon County, Alabama. So these are all of the things that we want to be paying attention to here. And these are some more last names. There's Barnett. Barnett is a name that I've seen, I've transcribed, and apparently there were some Barnetts and Tukabacha, which is the Tuskegee. So again, now I'm like trying to make all of this make sense. And then here we are, 1833. Lucy's family is still fighting. After 1824, Lucy's alive. She has a past. She goes between the chiefs. And now they're still fighting in 1833. And so this particular deed I came across, 1833. So let's remember, there were these voluntary sessions that occurred up until 1832. So what was feeling like to me, Lucy, you saw the writing on the wall. You saw that they were trying to move people from your native land to somewhere else. So now you're like, wait. We shouldn't have to go anywhere. We should be qualified to be considered within the Creek Nation because I have this past, because I descend from Cherokees. So what must we do? Go before the chiefs? Let's do that. So this particular date, 1833, they're still fighting because there's still ceding of land occurring. We still haven't hit the Trail of Tears time period yet. So they're still amongst the Native Americans fighting their case. We, the undersigned principal chiefs of the Creek Nation, do hereby certify that we've been for many years acquainted with a free woman of color, Elsie, the daughter of Lucy, and her children, to wit, Nancy and Hannah. So now we have a Elsie, a Nancy, and a Hannah. And they're basically saying that we do consider Elsie to be free. Therefore, we consider her children to be free because of Lucy. And now at the bottom, look at the names that signed this deed. The census takers were witnesses. Parsons, Enoch Parsons, and B.S. Parsons. Tuscan Hall, Nahamiko, Mad Blue, Little Doctor, Tukabachi Miko, Manor Way, and Yoholo Miko. Now remember, I was just looking at these records, didn't know how to decipher one name. But then that body of online of the census, now this is making sense. Nancy's family is going before these chiefs. Here's another record. Suki, the daughter of Lucy, and her children, Phoebe and Mariana. And they're going before the chiefs. And the chiefs are having to say, we are know of her. She's the daughter of, they can be free. Here's another record in 33. Dick, the son of Lucy. For many years, last past residing in said nation near Fort Hull. I lost my mind. Where's Fort Hull? I think I know the proximity of these people, but now they're living near Fort Hull. Where is Fort Hull? Fort Hull. So now that was my new rabbit hole, but I'm going through all the deeds. I'm trying to transcribe these deeds, and I keep getting hit with Lucy's family fighting for their freedom. Sandy, a free man of color, the son of Lucy, living near Fort Hull. So basically, they're saying he has a right to be free. And these is everyone that was signing that deed. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm on to something here. This is amazing. I hope I'm related to this family, you know? We the undersigned chiefs, for many years acquainted with the free woman of color Betsy and her children, Creasy, George, Lucy, Leah, Manuel, and Adam, and everyone who signed. And then Lucy and Bessie, being free people of color, in possession of real and personal property, but acquainted with the custom and laws of the white people, do appoint J.A. Allen, our proper and lawful agent, to transact for us all of our residence with restriction. Thus he shall in no case dispose of any of our property unless in our presence and by our special direction. So in summary, Lucy and Betsy had land. And again, they wanted this land. And so therefore, they appointed J.A. Allen as their agent or their legal representative to sell the land, but they basically wrote that he could not bait and switch or do what he wanted to do with it. And these are the people who were signing that document: Zach McGirth, Abbott, Bessie Lucy, and Samson Loving. And I'm like, okay, now I see some European names that are being connected to these records. So after Hawkins died, I wrote, the legal systems changed. The Alabama Orphans Court had to step in to protect Lucy's family by appointing guardians, which was a way to help them keep their free status and recognized by the state. So as they were coming across these different types of scenarios, they had to ask themselves, how are we going to deal with this? So they was contacting the government. The government said, okay, we're going to enact a new law. Every time something happened that they either liked or they didn't know what to do with, they were enacting laws. So in 1835, which I read, appointed guardians for Lucy's descendants. This formalized their status, protected them as free persons. And this was just showing those particular records and me trying to really zoom in on them. So now, where was Fort Hall located? I was hot on the trail, banging the internet, banging ChatGPT. Where is this Fort Hall? It has to be somewhere. There's a Fort Mitchell. Where is Fort Hall? Because I need to understand, where were these people living? So now you see Fort Mitchell on the right, and then you get to see Fort Howling Green. And then Fort Decatur was right above it. And over to the left is Fort Toulouse, which now today is called Fort Jackson. I said, okay, I'm getting close. This was route by which the Army returned. So Fort Hull is where they were living. I was like, where is Fort Hull? And there it is, near Tuskegee in Macon County, Alabama. So if those chiefs were coming from Casita, look at the map, Tallahassee, Casita. If they were coming from Fort Mitchell and Casita to try to do business with the other principal chiefs, they had to come together and be able to sign off these deeds and these records. This is where their family was living. And so now I get a good understanding, because my family was in Macon, Tuskegee, Fort Davis, Union Springs, Bullitt County, this whole area. Their lives are making so much sense to me. They fought to remain. What is the likelihood that me or some other of us researching in Bullitt County could be related to this family? And this is just another blown up version. Old Creek Village, Fort Hull. And it's so funny because, I just went to Alabama and I was trying to find information and records. No one wants to talk about this kind of stuff, or no one, quote unquote, knows. And it's out there. It's out there. So now, this is the little spot on the other map, a township map of who was living where. I'm like, where is Fort Hull? So determining what tribe Lucy and her family were with. So again, now we remember Big Warrior. Now we remember Little Prince. They signed these records. So this is me showing the correlation between the signatures and who was signing what and where and for what group of bodies of family. And the fact that the blue dots are representing they were actually chiefs in what towns. Eufaula was where Yoholo Miko was. He had 2 slaves. Manowe is number 6. He was in Okfuska. I'm not sure what that was or what it became. But Tukabachi is 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now we get to see all the number of slaves that they had. So now I know this family lived in Tukabachi, in Fort Hull, and the chiefs had slaves in the area. And so as I go and look at all of the people who had last name, here's another one, Casita Town. Nihar Miko had 4 slaves. So this is showing how to navigate records and research to try to make it make sense, because we need census records, deeds, and probate records. That's what we understand. But the further back we go, we got to start getting in touch with history and more than what we are used to researching. This is in Tuckabatcha Town. I'm still looking for Lucy's descendants, but now I see names Dick and Betsy, and I'm trying to pay attention to what was the last names these people had. And this is where we see the Cornells was living in Tuckabatcha, the McQueens were living in Tuckabatcha, the McGirths, Zachariah McGirth, he had 7 slaves. Trying to see, Suki Cornells had 22. Betty Cornells had 23. So I'm now looking at the names to see, do I see a Suki and a Lucy? There is in Kubahatcha town, Betsy, who was a free Negro. I'm like, okay, I see you, girl. My grandmother used to told me that they used to go fish at the Kubahatcha Creek. And I'm like, okay, that's somewhere in either Indian Creek, Fort Davis, or Bullitt County. But somewhere where my family was living is where they were walking, right? Okay. And Zachariah McGirth, I think we saw him on another grouping. And these are some, so remember I mentioned the name Peter Anderson? So I saw his name. I'm like, I don't know who he is, but I have a better sense of how to research further. And I'll talk about that as well. And so we looked at some of those. And this is just showing you that the seeding of the Forest Trail of Tears, the seeding of the land in 172, this is that area where all of that happened. That is the body of research that we're looking at. And everything in orange highlight our major cities we're familiar with or major towns: Columbus, Opelika, Montgomery, Birmingham, Atlanta, Hawkinsville. The red are when the numbers that were the cession of the lands being given up from the Native Americans, and the green is my Tuskegee, Union Springs, Eufaula, Clio, Troy, Elba. This is the area my family was living. All of that was Pike County before it became Bullitt County and parts of Macon County. So this is the things that we want to make sure we know. So this is a document I found that's showing how on the left, Cahaba or Cahaba became Cahaba, Cahaba, but that was the Native American spelling for it. So Chattahoochee, this is how they would spell it, but this is what we chose to spell it. Chateaunogi became Chattanooga. So having an understanding of the correlation with the names, with the places of where we're researching and our families were, helps us to understand our connection to the Native American history that could have been there. Okay. This is just showing some more letters with some people's names. So General Woodward was this famous person who wrote about his time in this area. And I either have his letters or I think I found his letters, some of his letters, and printed them all out, put them in a binder because I'm going to read it. I need to read what he's saying. Maybe one day somebody's going to talk about Lucy and her whole family. But all of these is calling out some names more as a last name, living in Montgomery. This is calling out some other names in the area. Condon. This Woodward knew Evans, Tatum's, Fitzpatrick's, Gosses, LePrade. He also knew Bob Mosley. He knew Fitzpatrick's. My family line is Fitzpatrick's. So this why this was kind of cool to hear. But he's giving a background of what life was like and what was going on at the time. This is showing the tribe locations then and now. And I think this might be where I either Googled it or maybe I did do a chat GPT with the township and range. But I still think it's worth looking into it a little further. But it's important for us to know that if we're going to research in this area. These were the different Creek census that were taken. So those numbers you saw that I was showing on the map, this is showing you where those numbers were coming from. And then they had a map correlating to that. That's where those maps were coming from. And this was done, there were other censuses that was taken as well. So now we're talking about, we're at 1836. So Lucy still did her fight. She's pushing into 1833. And now they're getting sick and tired because these people won't leave. So despite promises of voluntary relocation, conflict and pressure mounted. So the Creek War of 1836 erupted. The U.S. government used the uprising as justification for full removal, and the forced removal occurred 1836 to 1838. 15,000 Creek men, women, and children were rounded up and marched west to Oklahoma. And so that's what we know of. But the conversation is, did anyone remain behind? So this is a document, this should have went earlier, talking about Dick, where he sold land and in 1832. So Dick had land as well. So these were people who had land, which you know is huge. They were not considered slaves. And it's saying he was living in Macon County. What did I say? Or Hull. He was in Macon County. So, and this is another document, and this is talking about the township and the range of the land that he was selling. So all of these are going to be those pieces of information that helps you to figure out your connection. So if I don't figure out my connection, I'm going to figure it out for somebody. But this is teaching me how to understand how to research in this area. So now the question is, what happened to Lucy's family after the Trail of Tears hit? So this is just a summary, just saying her mother, her mother, it was saying her grandmother was Cherokee. So she was a blend of Native and African ancestry. At some point, Lucy was enslaved or in a position where her free status needed formal recognition. And I believe, so this is Chat saying it, but why would you call her a free person if she was full Native? And many of the blends of European and Native still were not considered free people of color. Her color came from an African connection somewhere. So either it was the grandmother and the grandfather, or it could be Lucy's parents. But somewhere they recognized she was of African origin, but she was of a high Cherokee person. And then somewhere someone probably got with a Creek, or why is she still amongst the Creeks is what I'm still trying to research and figure out. So Lucy's family shows the struggle to protect freedom in the transition from Creek law to U.S. state law. It highlights the Creeks agency's key role, Hawkins' support, and the family's effort to keep their freedom recognized. And this was me looking at all of her family. So Lucy and this group, Bessie, Dick, Sandy, Elsie, and Suki, were under the Samuel Cobb, basically was the person who had to manage them. And James Allen in 1835 had to manage this list of people. Because so again, and I talked about this last week, when you're a free person of color, you got to have someone who's going to manage you, watch over you, to make sure that you're of upright character and good standing in the community. So they were appointed as guardians of this body of family. But then I believe, I'm still researching, but I believe that Dick, Betsy, and Suki married into the name Cornells, or they are somehow maybe the children of the Cornells. That's something I'm still researching. But because of the census, because of the records, and they had land, I do believe they married into a family. Now, how can we prove any of this to be something that could be of use for our line? So one of the things I needed to do is, where is their trees? So I wanted to search for some trees to get an understanding of who are all the children, or I was going to create the tree. But I found the tree. You can't read this, but this is showing you that I literally found a tree on Ancestry where she had these amazing names of the Native Americans. And I can click on these names and see, did they stay in Alabama or did they go to Oklahoma? And so much is being done, has been done, that allows us the ability to, and this is a public tree. So thankfully, we're able to take a look at it and see what it says. And I'm looking for a sliver of something that tells me maybe I could be in these families somewhere. This was the Cornell's name. So under the name Cornell, I think I have a connection, but Cornell, Coro, I don't have matches. But I do have matches if I type the name Cornell, ELLS. And so there's always different variations of these spellings. This is his daughter, and who she married, Joseph Joe Magdog Cornels. And I'm like, okay, I see some Cornels. And then down here is showing someone chased the name to Cornhill. So bodies of work can be found. WikiTree, I'm going to talk about next week, but they weren't on WikiTree, and either I added them to WikiTree or I'm adding more information so that now we can find if there's any slaves identified, any slaves listed somewhere. It's about finding this information so that we can use it. Now, for the family that did migrate through the Trail of Tears or through forced or volunteer migration, this is just a chart showing you the paths. The Cherokees were in yellow, the Choctaws were red, the Chickasaw was purple, the Creeks were orange, 5, 6, and 7, and 8. Some of the Creeks actually went down to New Orleans and then up going toward Oklahoma. So if we're wondering why we have connections in Louisiana or Mississippi, knowing this body of work allows us to have a better understanding of family that's in a different state than we are familiar with. But you don't know what to do with it if you don't know and aren't familiar with the names. And then this is just showing that sliver of land that they actually got to call home out of all that territory. The Muskogee Creek Nation in 1832, which is where in Indian Territory for Oklahoma. But this is the body of work where the Creeks actually got to reside. And this is just showing another jurisdiction of that little sliver where the different tribes are residing. So the Seminoles, remember, came from Florida, and that purple is the Seminoles. So it's just amazing when we slow down, take the time, and get an understanding of what this means and how we can use it to our advantage. We can't if we don't know the history. And this is the tribal jurisdictions, again, just showing you how that breaks down. McIntosh County. I mean, all of these, when they migrated to come here, these counties, these places were named after some people. Toward the bottom, it says Tuckabachie, Holdenville, Wetumpka. We know what Tuckabachie. Oh my gosh, there's a Tuskegee, Eufaula. Oh my gosh, this just helped me because now I see that maybe when they migrated from to the right, they came here and they set up shop here because they needed to support each other. So this is really cool to see. So if I'm going to look in the Dawes Rolls, I now have a good sense of where I'm going to be looking, maybe what it's going to be called. Because I didn't know what to do with the Dawes Roll. But now that I've done this body of researching around the Native Americans, it makes more sense. So this is me searching DNA, just throw some darts at the wall and see if it could stick. So I have some Macintosh matches. And as you can see, I have 2 people who have Macintosh strongly in their tree. And Friday Denise was new to me. Jariah's, I've seen his name. He's pulling from my Wiggum name. That's out of Georgia as well. So we could definitely be related more than one way to a person. This is me searching for the name Hawkins. And Denise has Friday Denise. Denise has Hawkins in her tree. And when I looked at her tree, I said, okay, who are these people you got in your tree, girl? She has William Hawkins, and that yellow spot says slave of Jane Hawkins. So William Hawkins and Cindy Hawkins were the slaves of Jane McIntosh. So she was a Hawkins who married a McIntosh. And I am DNA related to her. Oh, I was excited. And I think that the orangey dot next to P. Hawkins Friday and David Marshall are their Dawes roll information because she was tracking to Oklahoma. And now I see I am possibly related to Hawkins. I have Hawkins matches. Okay, let me see how I can make this make sense. This is my Cornell search. The Cornells, Noles, I don't have. Sometimes, especially if they have African in them, and they have blended origin, they change their names to set themselves apart. So those are some things, but this is how we can try to see if we're descending. This is a record here that's showing all the chiefs, but this at the top says an application of Margaret Lasley, administrator on the estate of Angus Lasley, died. And at the bottom, these were his slaves: Isabella, Lydia, Satira, Peggy, and Sam. If you have matches to Leslie, which I do, I did not check Leslie, which I will, but I know in the Alabama group we have someone who is a Leslie, and I'm related to her and her husband. And she was a Leslie by marriage, but I'm related to her husband, and they're in the Jet Match group. So now I'm like, hold up, hold up. This just reminded me how I can try to see how I'm going to line up with the possibility. So just because we match people don't mean we match them on the name we're chasing. So that's something we want to be careful of. But if we can line that up with some DNA and with some additional people, then now we are on a better track. And GEDmatch is a whole nother way that helps us to prove that connection, which is why I love GEDmatch, if you know me. This is me showing you my tree where my gaps live. If I have gaps, that means there is a spot I don't know. There are some possibilities that I can be researching. If it's filled in, then I'm solid with these names because of how I've researched to date. When I find a European connection, I can set it and forget it. So I like finding them because I don't got to look in that line no more. But I still have to find the enslaved person. I know that based on some conversations and researches we've done, I do have that on my YouTube channel. We descend from European women who purposely had families with the enslaved and indentured servants. That was last week's talk about Melungeons. So we descend from European women who chose to have children with Africans. So I still have to figure that line out. But the further back we go is where we're going to find it. So these are major gaps that I still haven't figured out. This is my Fitzpatrick line, my Hooks line. This is my Stratford line coming out of, I think this is Orangeburg. This is South Carolina. I think my Stratfords might be hitting South Carolina, but this is an unknown slave who had a child with George Stratford, the enslaver, and that child was Mariah. I don't know who she is. So there are gaps that I can fill in researching enslavement. But if you can't get yourself to 1870, you can't be looking way back here. So I'm trying to fill in these particular gaps. So one thing I want to show you here with my gaps is here. So we're going on oral history. My grandmother said she walked with her grandfather, who was half Indian, and he was a Creek. And back then I said, okay. And my aunt, her daughter, said she saw Peter Cope, her grandfather. And Peter Cope is right here, my grandmother's grandfather. So I knew I'm supposed to be looking for Creeks associated with Peter. Wasn't ready to do any of that then, but now preparing for this particular talk, I'm like, okay, let me line this up. Peter, where is your Native American coming from? So the Prathers or Praters are Europeans. The Sinclair, the Wanamaker's are coming from South Carolina. It could be there, but I'm not sure. But the Rhodes name is a major gap for me. I said, okay, maybe it's these Rhodes. And then I remembered Bullitt County, Alabama has this book that they write everyone, tribute to families. And this photo was in that book. It says Queen Esther, part Cherokee Indian. She was the grandmother of Queen Esther. So she was Harriet McGrady Mason. I researched the McGrady's, I researched the Copes, I know this whole line. So when I figured out, and my grandmother said, "Oh yeah, we're part Masons. We're related to the Masons." That's what she said. We're related to the Masons. We're related to the McGrady's. Okay, so I was able to use her oral history, but how do I make it make sense? Now this book got published saying that Queen Esther's grandmother was part Cherokee. Okay, she's Cherokee. So this is Harriet. So now I'm looking at, and I knew who Isaac was. Isaac came from Butts County, Georgia, because I knew his line. He's connected to me through this marriage, but he was enslaved with my other Cope line. But the Rhodes, this is McGrady and the Rhodes. So Samuel and Jemima Rhodes. So now I know that it is this Rhodes line that has some Cherokee connection that I now need to research. And so all of these are things that's going to help us to try to make this stuff make sense. Why was Peter in Bullitt County? Jemima in 1826, and they're saying they came from North Carolina. So this has to be either Samuel's mother or Jemima's mother. It's strange. But it's all about researching, right? It's all about researching. And then the bird line I know is Native American, and they connect to Rollins and Fortunes and Carters and Jones. So this is just me showing. This is a woman out of Bullitt County. Her last name was Turner. They had her photo in that book that said she was of Creek Indian. And so all of these are things that little clues that can help us to make sense. So I shared 2 weeks ago when I did the Native American research, there were census that were done amongst the different other tribes, Choctaws. Here are some resources: the Chickasaws, the Seminoles, the Cherokees, and then online resources that are available in the Muskogees. So I reached out to them so long ago, but I knew I couldn't do anything with it because I didn't know what to do. Next week, join me as I show you how we're going to make stuff make sense using Wikitry. Thank you guys so much for hanging in here for me and with me. Questions, answers, and feedback.
Yes, Deborah. Good job. I really enjoyed the presentation. I really did.
I saw you coming in and out. You got to come off speaker. I'm not familiar with your name.
Wilgie, that's me.
Oh, this is what Wilgie.
I'm at work. That's why I was in and out. But I was paying attention. Trust me. I was loading up the feed. Trust me.
It'll be on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Definitely.
It's scary doing a presentation and not knowing what you all know and making sure that what I say makes sense and it's on point. So
yeah, but the background is we're watching and we're listening. Amanda had to go. I did share some good information. I ran both of her kids, so we're kin.
Awesome.
Oh, I don't play no games. You know what I mean? Shoot.
Awesome.
I ran her profile in 3 minutes. I ran both of her kids. I ran both of her kids. So I'm third cousins to her first kid. And I'm fourth cousins to the second. So I think it's a little more accurate with the first kid. We're kin. So I told her the connection with me and her would have to be African American, Caribbean, Dawkins, Hawkins, that line, Brown, Turner, whatever the case would be. Yeah. So that, yeah. Stephanie Dawkins, whatever. So those are Stephanie Dawkins people too.
Oh, those are Stephanie people too, because I know.
Yeah, those are Stephanie people too. So if it's Stephanie people too, and she's kin, and they're kin to me, so they're also kin to my dad's mom's dad, and then that connection going through Trinidad because she has DNA matches out of Jamaica. Gotcha. So yeah, so Dawkins Hawkins African American Caribbean connection. Yeah, then it would make sense.
She didn't know she had Jamaica. I told her tonight.
Well, I kind of gave her a sugar on top reinforcement, so she's gonna go to bed happy.
Amanda, I did Jamaica in your DNA matches on your mama's side and your daddy's side. Well, I told her we all do, especially from that European Jamaica connection. So
Yeah, because out of England, there was settling in Jamaica, but also there was an Irish settlement in Jamaica. The Carr family, which is one of the prominent families of Ireland, they settled there early 1600s in Jamaica, and they infiltrated every single industry in Jamaica, every single industry you name it. So the family been there for a while.
yeah,
The
yeah,
migrations have been there for a while. Yeah.
absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much, Will T. Miss Joan,
Anytime.
what do you think? She hasn't been to a presentation of mine in about 3 years.
I think you did a fantabulous job. Yes, you did. You did amazing. And I absolutely enjoyed it. And I was trying to get the names, a few of the names that I hear familiar and know, and check them against my tree.
Yeah,
I thought I did what's a Gen Com kit, but I did not. I
gotcha,
did not.
gotcha.
I did not. And you
Mhm.
quite sure, I'm quite sure you know I am related to so many,
Yeah,
as we all know that we all are mutts. We have so many
all about
spider webs to different
Yeah,
families.
Joanne. I'm very. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm very happy you brought that up. Um, Delbra, can you send her a snapshot of my Facebook page? She can go ahead and inbox me, and then I'll tell her where to upload her DNA at. What company you tested with, Joanne?
Ancestry.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Delbra, send her a snapshot of my Facebook, and then I'll send you where to upload your DNA. I'll get you running and going ASAP.
Okay.
I have some cousins that are no joke. I got Brian in South Carolina. I think between Brian Wilgie, I'm telling you, we gonna button this thing up for real because
We're gonna
it's like
tighten up every screw and every belly button.
exactly.
So
It doesn't. It to me, it's like what I felt like. They make it feel so huge and so heavy
Mhm.
that it's hard or you're fearful to tackle it. I'm glad it took me 36 years to finally look at this because now it absolutely is making sense. Making sense. And now I
But
can understand a Hawkins connection.
but you have to understand as well that when the families was chatteled off from how you say they came through Virginia and then they start branching out to North Carolina,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
have to look at how the settlements of the United States,
Mm-hmm.
that's how they were, how you say, weaving and webbing our family
Yep.
through the
Yeah,
settlements.
and that's how a lot of endogamy happened. By the way, Joanne, I sent you a thing. Check the chats in Zoom. That's a snapshot of my Facebook page. So message me and then I'll hook you up.
I don't know why I ain't just sending the link. I'm doing way too much.
Okay, I see it. I see it.
There you go. I just sent you.
And what I had to learn that you know how a lot of people always want to say, I want to go back to, I want to know where my family all the way in Africa. But first of all, you haven't even got your family how you say, in Alabama, South
Absolutely.
Carolina, North Carolina. That's where you need to start from ground up. Like I'm a Choctaw descendant
Hmm.
for sure. And like right now, my research, and I'm only narrowing my research because I have a broad research. I have hit so many families. I have a name, pretty much every name I have researched and I documented them pretty much. But where I'm going at with my Presleys, because my Presley married into the Stinson's family, and I'm doing Dunham and I'm doing my Grisses
Mm-hmm.
because it's a lot. And like with the Moore and the Heath family, they are a big family to research, and you will find that they were major components in the state of Georgia
Yeah.
and Virginia and North Carolina.
Yep.
And when you that branch of family, you will find love songs, you'll find Moors, you'll find Heaths, you'll find all those
I
names.
definitely have heats in. You should check.
That's my father's family. I have I my father line, I have went back all the way to Lucy. You and I don't know, I didn't want to bore the gentleman on the line. So we might have a connection of one of those Heath family. I don't
I
know. Did
believe
you go?
we do. I believe we do because on my mom's dad's side, not only it's Caribbean, but it's Lumbee, it's Hollywood Saponi, it's a whole bunch of other stuff too. But in the Carolinas, early 1600s, what happened was the only Caribbean people who came to North and South Carolina were the Barbadians from Barbados. Me and Deborah and many other cousins, we are kin to many of those people who came into North and South Carolina 1600s, and we have proof of the documentation and the DNA. So again, it could be very possible that me, you, and those cousins as well are also descendant of people from the Caribbean. The connection could be coming from 1600s, 1700s. The
Absolutely.
descendants, the
Absolutely.
descendants were dispersed when they left Carolinas. They went to Trinidad. A very, very few went to Haiti, but also many of them went to Jamaica. Many of them went to Guyana. Because you got to remember, the position that the people were in, sometimes they just didn't care where they went. The mindset was, I need to get to where I'm going. I'm stuck in a situation. Are you going to help me? Because what's in my mind right now is not what's in my shoes. You got to really look at the mindset. So until I'm settled, I'm not safe. You may look at me as being safe, but I'm not safe. So I kind of see where your Choctaw comes in. Choctaw
And
people are very
you're right.
friendly. Right. They're
And
very
you're definitely
friendly. They're
right.
right. They're very friendly. They're very homegoing. But Caribbean people is something that's embedded in their DNA. Until they don't understand the safety that they're into them, it's not, because they have to keep moving. And they have to say to themselves, the legacy that I'm leaving is dire, because that's the only form of currency that I have besides paper money. Right.
You
So
know, you
we
have to
are
also think too, those ships where they docked, they were cattling, how you say, chattling off our family here, 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 and here. And a couple of them were stowaways on those ships. They might not be on the manifest, but they came up, and you're right about Barbados, like the Dukes and the Pews, the Pews, especially those Pews, they were great slave, how you say, what you call those people,
the people who would disperse slaves onto the land or store slaves, right?
right. I can't think of slave,
Slave
what was
owners.
not slave owners, and what is that man with Epstein, what was he? Traffickers. They were
Traffickers.
really, yes,
Speaking of
yes.
traffickers, speaking of traffickers, have you heard of the Copeland family and Gittins family?
I think I have some of them in my tree. Let me look on my.
Okay, so that means you are descendant of Barbados, and I could prove it to you. There was several migrations. The Copelands originally came from England. From England, they came into the United States, Tennessee and the Carolinas or whatever. And then the Gittins came from a certain part of England into the United States. And then the Copelands did the final stop out of a certain part of England into Barbados. The Copelands, the Gittins did their final stop out of a certain part of England into Barbados. So you see how we're mixed. You see how we're mixed out of Europe into US and
Like
out
I
of
have a Robert Copeland who was born in 1893.
okay, is he European straight or is he mulatto or what? Because
Let
that
me
can see
see.
because that would help too. Um
We all got Copelands. I checked Amanda. She got Copeland. I got Copeland.
I got Copelands. I'm
Uh,
like 3 to 5 generations into Copelands because that's a 1600s connection. Deborah Copeland is a cousin of mine. She's third cousins to my father and fourth cousins to me. By the way, that Deborah Copeland I'm talking about, she's Haitian too. She's Barbadian Haitian, but mixed with me and her cousins on both sides. Long story short, that's too much science. But it is because if I break it down, you guys will be like, well, how did it happen? That's way too much science. Um, so again, Delbra Brown, it could be possible that you're cousins to me on my mom's side. I would not be surprised because a lot of the Jamaicans on my father's side, they share a Haitian community, either coming from my dad's side or share a Haitian community coming from my maternal paternal side or from my maternal side. There was so much movement back then. People had no control, man. You know, I have no control. I have no control on where I'm going. So I end up becoming mixed race because of a product from the past. That's all it is. Sometimes you can't find a common ancestor too because two cousins laid down and they passed away, so you don't have the information, but the DNA proves it. Right? So yeah.
well, the Copeland I see is going at least to 1730 in Virginia.
Virginia, yes. The Copelands were going to Virginia and Maryland as well. So
Yeah,
Deborah
my
Copeland's
mama's side, my daddy's side, probably gonna be doing something different. I'm telling you, we all over the place.
for real. We're a bunch of rabbits, squirrels, raccoons, reindeers,
That's all
alligators,
right.
all mixed in one.
Look, I'm here. I'm gonna break through this brick wall and find this and figure this out.
And I have a queens in my tree too.
You do? Are they coming out of Maryland?
So, and I had a person who I used to work with and went to high school with. He was a McQueen down here.
Mm.
And guess what? Our friend Anna, they have a Anna Doretha Let McQueen.
Okay. Speaking of McQueen, do you have McKnight? You should have McKnight further down the line, either before or after.
Is
The
that
McQueen
out of
should have a
North
connection.
Carolina?
Yeah, because the McKnights were slaveholders, and Barbados was one of the places that they went to eat. And I believe the Virginias, because in the family, what ended up happening was there was a wave of there was a few Jamaican families or Jamaican slaves that left Jamaica that settled in Virginia, and there was a few Jamaican slaves or families that left Trinidad that left and that went to Virginia. So there was a lot of important things in history that's pertaining to our bloodline. A lot,
Yeah, yeah,
a lot. Those folks were ninjas. The men and women, a lot of them were ninjas.
yeah.
No, for real. A lot of their descendants even admitted it was like, yo, we're related to ninjas. Like in Trinidad, a lot of them went to fight the War of 1812. So the story of the African Americans that
Gotcha,
settled in Trinidad is our bloodline.
gotcha.
The story of the African Americans that settled in Samana, Dominican Republic is our bloodline. The story of the African Americans that settled in Haiti in 1820s, 30s, and 40s is our bloodline. When Jean-Pierre Boyer was president of Haiti, oh yeah, the African American emigration to Haiti. So these people really kind of knew what they were doing. A lot of things were done consciously. Again, they're escaping racism in Boston, Massachusetts, Virginia, Rhode Island, so many places. Their houses get bombed and their house catches on fire. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Voting suppression. I'm getting spat at and I'm getting stuff thrown at because of voting. The next vote to Haiti, I gotta go. Right? These are things. There's books that talk about it. The James Redpath movement. I got to go. So it's sad to say, but we become a product. That's where the legacy becomes so good.
Very
So,
true.
yep.
Well, thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
I'm glad you hung in there. I'm glad I hung in there. Because I definitely want to make sure I do these presentations and make them available. So thank you guys so much. Next week is WikiTree. I promise you, I got you when it comes to WikiTree. I got you. And there's such a huge community out here that got you too. So we can, and what WikiTree is for me is what Ancestry is not. They're looking for the slaves. They're pulling the data out all about the African American story and the enslavement story. And I'm putting
So
everything.
how would you have to I just don't get into WikiTree, but you tell me WikiTree is good. I'm not a Wiki,
I got you.
you
Hey,
know.
I've been
Delbra.
doing three out of three. 3 out of 3, I got you. On that fourth one, I'm gonna set it on fire because I want to get y'all at least put your profile. If you do nothing else, upload your tree. Why? Is I can't see I'm related to you. And Joan, I'm using the census as an example. I promise you, I'll need you to get your people to just put their profile in, their profile with their parents' people in there. As far back as they can go. They don't got to do no more because I already did it.
Delbra, I didn't forget about the thing that we got for the 26th. Let me look at my schedule right now.
Yeah, that's
The,
the conversation about WikiTree.
okay.
And that's go
Yeah,
ahead.
but anywho, that also includes WikiTree. I didn't want to sound like I'm throwing you off topic, but no big worries. That sounds okay. Yeah,
And I'm gonna tell you why. Because I can almost promise you, they're doing other countries. I can promise you that I'm focusing in one corner, but I'm gonna make sure I open it up so that you can see the body of work that's happening in the other corner, so that you can go look in the corner that makes sense for you. Because the goal of it is we need to try to see where our families is and where our connections are. And
and the goal is to also close the gap. Period. The gap needs
absolutely.
a lot of
And
gaps
that's
need to be
absolutely.
closed, man.
and that's completely what their focus is. So I'm excited about trying to get you guys over there because I got excited, and now I'm not so afraid that people are going to change the data set or remove my information, because I will show you what I'm doing. You'll be like, yeah, girl. And I will show you what someone already did, why I was able to say my stuff is going to be safe here. Everything have to do with slaves for anybody is going here. So
Yeah, just be easy on how you rub their feathers, yo, because some people are some type of way. It makes sense, yeah.
But it's hard. It's hard to see with me. I don't like, I know it's important because I write. I create, you know, I create and I write books.
mhm.
But you don't want to run people off because, right now with the day of the hacks and all of that, and people are very skeptic. Like today, I had a huge scare when it came down to my situation. Yeah, somebody told me I had a Geek Squad. They was trying to charge me $488. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I don't have a Geek Squad account. But just that alone.
Yeah, yeah,
Now, and then when you start talking about people DNA, people are not who they are and say they are. So you have to approach them slow and build their confidence up. It's not
Yeah.
like, you just drop and drop and drop and drop. People are fearful.
yeah,
And that's why I move slow. People tell me, so, oh no, you got a great following. I do, but I have to move slow with them because you'll scare them off.
true,
Just
true.
like I know with when M try to talk to them and speak with them and tell them, we don't want your stuff. We ain't trying to dig you out. We just trying to find our ancestors. But they don't get that. They don't understand that we have aggressive stance because we're doing research. It's because what I want, so I can connect my dots. But they don't understand that
Yeah,
we're connecting the dots that it's going to be very important to you because when I connect the dots, you win.
yeah. And
They don't get it.
I'm gonna tell you something. They will, because when I show you what I've done for the census, I promise you, y'all be like, all I gotta do is go from Charles or Friday down to me. Oh, I could do that because they don't have to do anything more. I've already done the researching of the enslavement piece. So not everyone has that as a passion like me. I wish they did. I wish I could get just a couple more of me, like me, similar to me. Only because this is the body of work that's needed to find the connection, like what I just showed you with Lucy and her family. I never would have figured out, never would have thought that.
Well, what was Lucy's family last name?
Girl, that's what I'm trying to finish finding out now. I think it's Cornels, I believe. But what the next step is looking at the 1840 census for any of these counties and see what names come out. So all of that is just more digging, more continual research. But that's that part. So what happened was, again, I did all this because I'm just trying to transcribe records, looking for a couple of family. I don't even know if I'm related to Lucy, but she's too close to home for me not to be. So
Yeah.
now what I have to do is figure out which of Lucy and any of these tribes left, who stayed, because it's the ones who stayed, build a life in the area, and then we're able to see that we're here. Your corner would, I'm telling you, the Fitzpatricks were in Montgomery, Otaga, they were everywhere. Georgia,
And also
Macon,
Chahaba. Chahaba was the capital of Alabama. And then how you say,
yes,
then Montgomery became the capital.
yes, yes. So a lot of business had to go over there for buying of the land. You had to go over there until
Because
they moved it
Chahaba
to
is a
Montgomery.
ghost town now.
Mm. But then to
It's one of
find
the
out,
hauntedest. It's one of the hauntedest place in Alabama. It's
yeah.
not too far from. It's between Montgomery and Greenville, where we were.
Oh, okay, okay,
It's in that area, so it's not
okay,
far.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I
Well,
thank
I
you
know.
both for coming.
Thank you, my love, and I appreciate you. And we're gonna chat it up.
Hey,
All right.
Joanne, go on the Zoom chat and look at the snapshot of the Facebook. That's my Facebook. So I'm waiting for your message.
I put the link in there too.
Okay.
Thank you. So how will we find the Zoom chat after we hang up, or what do
I'm
we
gonna
do?
put. I'll put the link on.
The
I'll put the
Facebook
link
group.
in your group. It's see. Oh, she has a group. She's not in. You're not in my Bullitt County group. But I'll put it in the group and I'll message you once I put it on YouTube. My
Okay, you want me
videos
to
are on.
join your group, your Bullitt County group?
Yep. But I'll
Because
put
you know
it.
I have a lot of family in Bullitt County. You know that, right?
Oh, of course you do.
Yeah, please join so I can hit the button for you. That's all you need to do.
Bet it up.
Okay.
Bet it up.
Okay, so I'll call you, Deborah, and tomorrow we're gonna chat it up because I had a very long day today.
All right, that's fine. Thank you guys
Uh,
so much.
Night, night. You did amazing.
Thank you.
Good
Bye-bye.
night. Bye bye.